Today, we have our guest, Dr Hezri Adnan. He is a Senior Director of Research at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies in Malaysia and specializing in comparative public policy with work spanning across areas such as natural resources, security, sustainable development strategy and green economy. Today, we're talking about refashioning Malaysia's future.
That's right. So, of course, no stranger to this area of work, and topic is also authored many books, including The Sustainability Shift, Refashioning Malaysia's Future, which, of course, as you said, is our topic for today. Welcome, Doctor, to the studio. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jessy. Thank you, Elane, for inviting.
We, of course, prior to even coming on the show, we were talking about the environment and how, you know, it sounds like a death knell right now. Everybody is just, you know, talking about it. But is there real change? What would you say are the major ecological threats closer to home? We're talking about Malaysia. What are we facing?
Where do we start, right? I mean, there's the whole gamut of things that we have to discuss.
Yes.
But if you ask me to pin down what are the main challenges that we face, I think we need to get our rivers, our water resources in order.
Right.
Because this is not just a threat to, you know, the wildlife, it's a threat to our own existence in Malaysia. 5 of our states in Peninsula are already considered water deficit states.
Wow.
So that's Perlis, Penang, Selangor, Johor, you know, and Malacca.
And these are major states. We're not talking about small states.
Yes.
Selangor, you've pinpointed, and Johor, these are major, large
and Penang, these are economic powerhouses,
yes.
you know, and we can't afford to get it wrong there.
That's right. And of course, in the wake of the pollution disaster in Pasir Gudang, which is where the hub of the economy in terms of the ports and economic activities happening, 111 schools were closed. That was a whole shutdown of the entire area.
Yeah.
What are the lessons that we can learn from that?
The first lesson is, of course, is that I think we've only pick and choose some of the areas that we think we can handle for a short term. For instance, I would pick the issue of plastics pollution, for instance. I think that's important for the country to address, but that's not the main, you know, key issue that we should be worried about. I think more effort should be put into cleaning up the rivers, for instance.
Right.
And it need not be a you know, just a cost issue on the side of government. It can be, we can turn this cleaning up rivers into economic opportunities.
Yeah. But it seems to me there's a lack of awareness of our responsibility and our contribution towards, you know, even as something as simple as river cleanliness.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, in fact, you know, when something like this makes headlines and spread all over the news, someone like you, who's an expert in this area, who's probably been talking about solutions and finding answers for most part of your life, how do you react? Do you go, "Oh, not again," or "I told you so"? Like, you know, you obviously see the gaps in the system. What are those gaps, and how can we bridge that together to put an end to suffering from these kind of issues?
Of course, if you look at all the policy documents, the words are all in the right places, I think. But the question now is the actions. And action is, of course, a function of how much money or resources you put into questions like enforcement, question like, you know, getting the private sector to be part and parcel of the solutions, and also to kind of build a social movement around this area, you know, that these are, I mean, our rivers are important for us, we should clean up. So if you look at the funding for 2 ministries in the past, Natural Resource Ministry and also the Ministry of Energy, Water and Green Technology, they constitute only 1% of our budget. And if you look at the previous Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, they had about 14,000 staff. And the bulk of the funding for this ministry, of course, went to paying emoluments. You know, so there's little program really for enforcement or to create awareness. I think we should put money where it matters now.
Right. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about focusing and putting the spotlight on where it's necessary. Yes, you know, we talk about no straws, plastics, and whatnot. Yes, that is good steps forward. But I think we need to start small, basics, roots, looking back at what are the core things that we're already missing beyond just the you know, don't use plastic bags at the supermarket.
Right,
and the mentality that needs to change, because I think we can get there at small steps. You know, they've always said this.
What would be a good starting ground?
Well, I think let's start with areas I think where we excel, at least better than some of our neighbours. This is in the area of forests or wildlife protection, for instance. Of course, there's issue with tigers and all that. But in a survey done by WWF a few years ago, when it comes to a question like, you know, what is your view about forest protection? more than 80% of respondents said, okay, this is very important, and we should really take care of our natural resources, particularly forest resources. But when it comes to issues like the causes of floods, less than 40% understood, the causality, the cause and effect. If you do this, what will be the impact on the environment? They don't understand that. I think there needs to be an awareness campaign built to at least get people to understand that their activities will have an impact on the environment. It's a kind of a cycle,
So is this talking about education?
Yes.
Education at the home, education because education at schools alone won't be enough.
That's
This
right,
has to be something that starts at the basic unit of the family.
Sure.
And the basic unit of the family, the head of the household is the parent. And the parent themselves seem to be at a loss of what is necessary as education at home.
But personally, my 2 cents, I would say that some of this education and awareness needs to be done at the corporate level. It needs to be done with thinking, walking adults, rather than just at the grassroots, which is a good starting point.
No, I think we're it's chicken and egg situation. Because at home it is the adults that need to teach the children, but do the adults have the necessary information?
I think they have to go in parallel, both of them.
Right.
Education for adults and education for children.
Right.
And for the longest time, Elane, we've been, saying, at least in the environmental movement, if we can get the Ministry of Women and Community Development to be part and parcel of this process, we can get mothers to understand the importance of environment.
Right.
I think half of the battle is done.
I think that's a great idea. I think it
half
should
the country.
It should
right.
be already in the policy that the Women Ministry
yeah.
has the incorporation with the Environment Ministry.
That's right. Yeah.
But so the question now, I guess, is: are we doing enough right now to stop ourselves from making the same mistakes, or rather, what is the way forward to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes?
Surely we're not doing enough, you see, because first of all, I mentioned about the funding into some of these activities here. But what we can try and do now is to get the state governments, particularly, to be more active in this area. Of course, states like Penang, they're developing their Penang Green Agenda, State of Perak, as for the past few years, we're talking about possibility coming out of Perak Green Economy. But I think this has to be across the board. All 14 states have got to be part and parcel, because land is a state matter. It's
right.
under the jurisdiction of a state. And we say land is agriculture, it's forest, it's also rivers that flow.
Which is what sustains us in terms of our life.
Exactly.
Water is the essence of life. Are our current policies strong enough?
As I said earlier, the words are in the right place, when it comes to policies. But
so it is there.
It is there, but now it's a question of implementation. Also to sort of tweak the or calibrate the penalty system a bit, I think. Yeah, and also to get the different increase it. Sorry for using.
No, that's fine, because I think it should be harsher as well. It's almost just this little slap on your wrist, whether it's wildlife or whether it's the environment.
Exactly, there needs to be harsher penalties. And currently, with the current government, is there more that they can be doing, because the current policies are in place? How are they doing in light of this?
I think now it's time to get to build some business opportunities for the private sector to come in, and to really create an industry around this issue of restoring our degraded ecosystems, restoring our degraded lands and all that. If that can be built, I think we'll be moving ahead.
I think for me, it needs to start from, we need to want to have a cleaner environment. We need to want to breathe better air, drink cleaner water, and have a greener a future for our children. We say that in paying lip service, but I don't think there's that real drive. What's your take on this?
It's a lot to do with corruption, but that's my personal opinion, because I think the environmentalists are trying to lobby for what needs to be done. Researchers like yourself, experts, are shouting it from the rooftop, but yet at the grassroots level, business owners, whether it's a factory or whether it's certain agencies, there are loopholes.
That's what I'm saying. That individually, we don't want it enough. We need a government policy. We need something to tell us that we can or cannot do. We don't want it enough that we are pushing governments to create that for us, as opposed to the other way around.
We're looking
we have
to you for the answers. What could be done immediately? What could be the first, perhaps, policy that we could introduce, or framework or idea?
Of course, when it comes to I mentioned earlier these 5 states which are now water deficits. Places like Ulu Muda, for instance, we really need to lock it up. I mean, there should be no logging in the watershed area.
Right.
That's the first step, I think.
Okay.
And then for degraded areas, I think, like I said, we have to build some pilot projects to try and see what are the business models, the possible business model that can, turn these problems into opportunities. If I can take example of Singapore, because of the water problem they've been facing, they turned that into an opportunity where they brought in the best of the companies in the world, I mean water companies, and it's somehow now a Silicon Valley for the water industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think we can work towards that as well. And
Plus
Korea
we have the resources,
we have the resources,
the knowledge.
yes.
Is there enough dialogue right now with the stakeholders?
Not quite, I would say. Not quite. I think the current government, it's almost about 1 year old, probably the first 6 months they were trying to understand the issues and all that.
Trying to stabilize the situation.
Yes. I think now it's time to bring in expert, the civil society leaders to come and sit together and see what are the top 10 items. We have to prioritize it because these are really big.
One by one, isn't it?
One by one, yes. And try to pick a number of problems, not just river cleanup, but a number of key issues so that we know the business model, how to deal with them.
Right.
Besides rivers, though, what are some of the other important areas that you feel we really need to, look at? Perhaps something that's already in the danger zone.
Of course, when you look at our forests in Peninsula, of course, we started during after the colonial period, it was still about 60% covered by forest. Now we're down to about 40%. And all these forests, they became four big islands now, and they are disconnected. And this is where the animals, the wildlife, we have to build corridors to connect them.
Right.
So this is more on the biodiversity side. But to me, still the frontier work that needs to be done is on the water side.
Right.
Because this deals with our existence.
I think with regards to forestry, I think a lot of us have seen certain footages that have come out in terms of ball patches that have appeared out of nowhere. When you see a corridor that looks like it's safe, but behind that sort of like wall of trees, there's actually illegal activity happening on that.
Exactly, yeah. So land clearance is still happening, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
So this
and open burning is still happening in a lot of areas.
This shouldn't continue, especially in Malaysia Baru, in the period of Malaysia Baru.
Yeah. So I guess
we were talking about solutions. Can we be watchdogs? Civilians, are we asking them to come forth and have a sort of like, is there a helpline, a call center for receiving all this and for action to be immediately
there are pockets of activities, I mean, civil society-led sort of watchdogs. For instance, in trouble areas like Kelantan, because of bauxite, in the Ulu Muda area to monitor the logging activities, also in Perak. But I think what is important now is somehow if we can find a way to connect this group together, to form a kind of a national alliance, so that we can have the big picture, and so the civil society itself can somehow find a way how to work together and get more organized.
Yeah, because it's a bit sad, because a lot of whether it's NGOs or independent agencies are doing the work on the ground.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's cleaning up rivers here or protecting wildlife there, but it's, like you said, disconnected.
That's right.
Everything sounds a bit bleak as we started with in this conversation. In closing this conversation, what is the silver lining that we can look for?
Well, at least I think we've voted in a new government.
There you go. That's a start.
It's called, Harapan or Hope, and I think there's more attention on these issues compared to before. And as you correctly pointed out, some of these issues actually, if you look closer, they have to do with our governance or lack of governance, rather.
That's right.
So we really need to look at some of these issues. For instance, the case of Sungai Kim Kim, who are behind these things. I think we really need to get down to the real issues.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hezri, for that. And we look for the people of Malaysia to play their part in order for us to be able to live in a better environment.
Each and every one of us, no matter what age or where you are, if you do see some illegal activity as well, please report them to the authorities, and the rest we hope will pan out the way it's supposed to. Nonetheless, we're keeping a keen eye on this issue.